Good evening and welcome to the State of Liberation Movement with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, F.ASCE Fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers. As always, we commence with Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. The internet has it that the conflict in the Cameroons began in 2016 with demonstrations by English-speaking lawyers, students and teachers protest against marginalization by the French-speaking majority met with a crackdown, activists arrested and several protesters shot by La Republic security forces. Separatists, they said, demands for an independent state grew, resulting in increasing violence. Some symbolically proclaimed the independence of a new state called Ambazonia. Well, since then, war crimes against humanity, against the people of Ambazonia, burning, killing, looting, raping, amongst many other atrocities, have continuously been perpetrated by La Republic du Cameroon against the peace-loving peoples of Ambazonia. Yet the world still moves in slow motion to act on these macabre acts. Well, tonight, as said earlier, we have the Secretary of State for Communications and IT to give us insights on this tragic incident as he comes with a focus on an open letter to the diplomatic community, analyzing the pattern and practice of La Republic du Cameroon massacres in Ambazonia, an overview on the genocidal onslaught in Ambazonia. We'll get right into this in a minute, but for now, let's get the prime headlines.
Well, let's get the prime headlines for today. Today is going to be an emotional one because we will be getting an overview of just a few massacres that has happened since the senseless war began. We'll give you the Donga Mantoun and BBC massacre, also the babies that were killed, burnt and fried as well. Also the story of a nursing mother when she got raped. Also Maapi and the gruesome way she was murdered. We will as well visit the Ngabo massacre. And just recently, just in case you haven't been following, we would also give you the Bali Combat massacre. Well, let's get the news in detail.
The media greatly influences society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with undaunted ABC Amber News on board.
You must understand that wars are fought and won in the media. The speed of the revolution on Ambazonia's quest for freedom cannot be explained without highlighting the diligent use of the media.
Franco-Cameroon colonizers, among other strategic moves, weaponized the media against Ambazonia for so long, and they continue to do so even today. The question would be, how much do the oppressed people of Ambazonia need to counter the media rage?
Indeed, how much more is required to stop the genocide? The carnage in Ambazonia didn't start today. In 1961, 1972, 1984, and 1992, Ambazonians were slaughtered in huge numbers and help was not forthcoming. Why? Because the oppressor was the piper in the media.
The good news is we have what it takes to dictate the pace.
Right now, ABC Amber TV is taking advantage of the wonders of multimedia aggressively
to inform the misinformed and disinformed with undaunted and other revolutionary programs bringing it to the news untold stories.
Most importantly, to win the media war by taking ABC Amber TV into every multimedia platform.
In a word, where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, Ambazonians has to tell her own story, not the other way round.
And like we say it always, Ambazonia must narrate her story accurately. We can do this together, you know, right? You are just a click away. Visit our website at www.abcambertv.com, and the steps are quite simple.
With just a click on the website, you can become a club member with so many benefits.
You can also make a one-time donation, advertise and showcase your goods and services at the marketplace on the website.
That was easy, right? You're welcome on board.
And thank you for opting for the winning team.
It was another massacre that showed just how the British Southern Cameroon's life had become in the hands of La République du Cameroon and French Cameroon soldiers. The La République du Cameroon tactics of divide and rule was unleashed in Donga Mountain region of the British Southern Cameroon on the 20th of October 2018 with targeted killings of innocent youth. Lured by the French Cameroon authorities, some gullible Fulani saw an opportunity to settle their old farmer-grazier conflict with the locals. It was the most diabolical and genocidal fashion the Fulanis could have done to their ancestral host, the local people. Well, today we go back in history. We will highlight some of the terrible genocide carried out so far. I am Oni Obala. We have Steph Smart. How are you doing, Steph?
Very well, Oni. Good evening, Ambazonians. Well, with the assistance of the French Cameroon armies, more than 41 young men in the area were rounded up and summarily executed in the Fulani grazing field to the glee of the Fulani community. Sympathizers believe some form of chemical weapons were used on the innocent civilians, evident by discoloration on the bodies.
Well, about 2 weeks after the Donga Matu massacre was the turn of the quiet village of BBC on the 12th of October 2018. While the BBC massacre were less in number than Bafut, Wum, Mamfe, and other areas, The uniqueness was in its savagery, in addition to executing them in front of their families. The French Cameroon soldiers equally set the bodies ablaze. This torching of bodies was the new modus operandi, or should we say official genocide strategy of the French Cameroon government on the minority English speaking people, because that's Ambazonian. It continued till date with no repercussions.
Until our next report going back in history, the fourth baby killed in Amazonia, three others were killed in Widukum. The Widukum one was allegedly fried in hot boiling oil. The parents of a baby allegedly murdered by Cameroonian soldiers last Monday have gone into hiding, afraid speaking out will make them a target for the authorities. Pictures of the dead 4-month-old baby, Marta Neighbor, was circulated online, along with a graphic video showing her body on a sofa with bullet casing near and her aunt crying as an unknown man filming the video accused Cameroon's military of killing her.
Well, report says that the family was visiting Muyuka in the southwest region so that the 4-month-old martyr could be presented to her grandfather. She was asleep on the sofa in his house. Her mother was cooking behind it, and her father relaxing out front when they heard gunshots. According to a neighbor, the men were arguing as when they left the house, with one asking another why he had shot such a young child. The military shot my child, Abo, the father said. They are the ones who shot my child. Right now, we are in the bush. We are running from government. He ended up by saying, I am afraid. Now, but on the other hand, the government denied that it was a false accusation. Mr. Rainer Sadi, the communications minister, gave his version of events in a statement.
Well, he said Neba was a former cessationist rebel, now rehabilitated, and that he and most of his family had fled with his ex-comrades, armed with knives and hunting guns, attacked his home. The baby had been killed with a knife, not a gun, he said, and the subsequent video of frying the video had been staged in order to demonize the country's armed forces. He did not explain how he knew this and did not announce an investigation into the baby's death. So your guess is as good as mine.
Into another sad starting mother rate. Well, the survival, a mother narrates that about 1500 on Sunday, 13 September 2020, she was at home with her aunt and her two children. Now, in her own words, she said, we heard a heavy knock on our door. It was so hard. And because I was carrying a 1 year, 6 months old child, I delayed to open. Now, when she eventually opened the door, the commander asked her to step out. Now, in her narration, she says, when I stepped out as commanded, one soldier went into the sitting room. She says, I don't know what he did in the house, but when he came out with his colleagues still outside, he asked her to follow him back to the house. Now, while they were there, he said she should choose between sleeping with her or killing. And while she was still trying to understand that, the Lord.
Well, the survivor further narrates all attempts to beg the soldier not to rape her proved futile as he lifted her gown and forcefully raped her. And while she screamed for help and in pain, he threatened to strangle her to death. And when she was screaming, the other two soldiers in front of the house responded with sporadic gun firing in the air so as to distract people from getting her loud cries and to come for her rescue. Well, when this was happening, they spotted two boys coming from the other side of the house, so they abandoned her and chased after those boys, she narrated. As recounted by the survivor and corroborated by her aunt from Brigade Ta at Intarinkon, they were sent to meet the director of the Bamenda General Hospital. At the hospital, they were received by Dr. Dennis Nsamin, who carried out several tests on her. From the hospital until they were sent home, they have been taken from one place to another, but she says she doesn't know what they were saying.
All right, but before she eventually got to the hospital, she was caught on camera, emotionally exhausted. Now, let's see what she was trying to explain in a video.
Who's that you go? Yeah, okay. Calm down yourself. Calm down.
Just calm down. Calm down.
When you end up over down pay, those are no man.
Wait. They ask. So they ask you say wait till they do the talk.
When you cry, so you create things and people them. Calm down. Not all the boys they stand for the young children. We do with them sooner for us. Calm down yourself. When you cry, so you create tension.
So it's as you don't get ID, can you just choose for
Talk.
Calm down yourself.
No cry.
When you cry, so you create tension. Calm down yourself. Let you cry. Calm down yourself. You know other boy them for Johnson Lee. If you know the mind face.
So he asks you say wait till. They ask you say wait till.
Avant de passer, they come here, they ignore them. They force now force. Normally you more fear.
Normally.
I don't cross now. They say me now with their big man. The one way we stand vote. It's my going to that super every day. I don't go meet them now. The other man now. The other one say my go meet up patron. I go meet up patron. Patron has some ID card. I tell you this one don't give me ID card. It does say they I tell you 17 years. He said the do I say for now when they do me anything. He said at the work of a so that me I don't give me ID card. I say yes. The other one they don't come on now. He go talk some motor man now. I want see can come now. The big man say my follow that man. Go start to play with people. They get ID card. I try to beg them, but I need to beg them, but they don't say man no try, but they man don't even try. Man no try, but they put me away. And the beg that policeman they did that. The other one jack me now enter some place where it's a petrol station. So now they put they don't get ID card. Now they go stand. No man no be there.
So Jack, you go down inside the waiting.
Me go there. He don't say my give my clothes. I don't say I didn't know the beg him. They say this I be mommy picking. I did give Bobby. He say man no try her life. Yes, I did her life, Papa. I beg you need. I beg the man today. The man never done. He king me. Jing me say my is jing me back up say my stand before I move my clothes nicely me over there.
So you move your blood review.
So it happened now. So for petrol station for veterinary junction, yeah. The Africa Petroleum.
Yes, now the Africa Petroleum.
Okay.
Only one bet no go.
Okay.
Don't worry, I said it.
If they can get
Yeah.
Well, more crimes against humanities have continued against the peoples of Southern Cameroon's Cameroon's burning, killings, lootings, raping, war, atrocities continuously perpetrated by La République du Cameroon against the peoples of Ambazonia. Yet the world still moves in slow motion to act on these macabre acts.
All right, another very tragic report on La République du Cameroon's continued violation of human rights is the story of a mother burnt in her home by French Cameroon soldiers. Well, she had to be buried just after the terrible incident.
Well, with this video that we're talking about, you get to see not only did La République du Cameroon military force or raise down houses and villages, but also they burn people in it. Well, let's take a look at this video.
They burn this compound. We want our mother inside. All the area is burned. You can see this is the house. I'm right inside the house. There's one of this mother inside. One of the old mother inside. So you can see the mother that they burn him. You can see the work of La République. So you can see it is very, very, very bad. So they decided to bomb places because it was not also easy on their own side. Yeah. Now people are digging by the grave to bury her. Yeah. So
now, with this video, we get to see not only did La République du Cameroon military forces raise down houses and villages, but also burned people in it. Well, captured on video and shared widely on social media, amongst dozens of clips that poured out of the Cameroons over the last few years, some of which analyzed by BBC Africa Eye.
While showing burning villages, other record acts of torture and killing, many of which too graphic to show, as you would have noticed already. Well, BBC Africa Eye captured that a man calmly sets fire to a house watched by a group of at least 12 men dressed in fatigue helmets and black webbing consistent with those worn by an elite army unit in Cameroon. All right, let's also give you one of the latest reports in Gabo massacre. Well, La Republic du Cameroon colonial military slaughtered 21 innocent civilians, including pregnant women and children, in cold blood. Survivors recounted the sad event of 14 February 2020 after the attack that took place between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. when residents of Ngabo 3 neighborhood woke to gunfire and found themselves surrounded by uniformed colonial La Republic du Cameroon invader soldiers and roughly 30 Fulani civilians who they recognized from neighboring villages.
Well, rights groups accuse La Republic du Cameroon colonial security forces of waging an increasingly brutal counterinsurgency campaign against Ambazonian freedom fighters after one of the deadliest civilian massacres in recent years sparked international condemnation and fears of an expanding conflict. The Ngabo killings were one of the La Republic du Cameroon security forces' worst atrocities since the conflict in the southern Cameroons, Ambazonia began in late 2016. The government initially denied that its forces were responsible, but following international pressure, the octogenarian dictator and tyrant Paul Biya established a commission of inquiry on March 1, 2020.
The colonial Yaoundé government then admitted that its security forces bears responsibility and announced the arrest of 2 soldiers and a gendarme in June 2020 who were presented before the colonial military. The tribunal in Yaoundé charged with murder, arson, destruction, violence against a pregnant woman, and disobeying others. The court is about 450 kilometers from Ngabo, making it difficult for family members of victims to attend. According to Human Rights Watch, it says when the trial started, it was welcomed as a step towards justice and tackling impunity for military abuse in southern Cameroon. But 3 years after the massacre, victims and their families are still awaiting justice while security forces have continued to commit serious human rights violations.
Well, Human Rights Watch research concluded that government forces and armed ethnic Fulani killed 21 civilians in Ngabor, plus 13 children and a pregnant woman, burned 5 homes, looted scores of other properties, and beat residents in a reprisal oppression against the community suspected of harboring freedom fighters. Ethnic Fulani living in and around Ngabo are also known as Mbororo and are mainly pastoralists whom the colonial government in Yaoundé uses to fuel the crisis.
The African Commission on Human and People's Rights has said that all investigations must be prompt, impartial, thorough, and transparent, and that failure transparently to take all necessary measures to investigate suspicious death and all killings by state agents and to identify and hold accountable individuals or groups responsible for violations of the right to life constitutes in itself a violation by the state of that right under international standards, including the United Nations Minnesota Protocol on the investigation of potentially unlawful death, and jurisprudence from human rights bodies such as the European Court of Human Rights. For an effective investigation to be transparent, victims and their families need to have reasonable access.
Well, lawyers for the victims and their families told Human Rights Watch that Section 177 and 189 of Cameroon Criminal Procedure Code provides the possibility that a magistrate could go to Ngabor and collect testimony from witnesses. But instead, lawyers said courts have used Section 336 of the Criminal Procedure Code to allow criminal proceedings to be heard and determined without witnesses present. International standards also require an effective investigation to identify and collect evidence from probative witnesses to take all feasible steps to identify and locate those allegedly involved in the crime and to hold to account all those responsible, such as those with command responsibility.
Instead, family members' lawyers said that the prosecution has presented testimony from people who did not witness the killings and whose testimony is at odds with witness accounts provided during their preliminary investigation, as well as reports on the massacre by the United Nations and local and international human rights groups, including Human Rights Watch. testimonies of administrative and military authorities who serve as prosecution witnesses in his case try to show that those killed in Ngabo were Ambazonian liberation fighters and not civilians. Now, this is what Barrister Munkem Suter, one of the family members' lawyers, he says it looks like the goal of the investigation will be to show that Cameroon security forces only killed separatist fighters in Ngabo and that the killing of any civilians was the work of vigilantes.
Well, the judicial authorities also appear to have made no efforts to locate the accused vigilantes. According to family members' lawyers, investigators had the telephone number and location of at least one vigilante, but apparently made no attempt to trace and apprehend him or to explain why they didn't. In the southern Cameroons, vigilantes work in tangent with local authorities and security forces and receive material support from the colonial government in the form of motorcycles, first aid kits, flashlights, and metal detectors. As a result, Republic du Cameroon subdivisional officers, including the one in Undu local government area, which includes Ngabo, should normally have a list of the vigilantes working in their areas. The use of ethnic militia by the colonial La Republic du Cameroon's government adds a dangerous new dimension to the conflict.
The prosecution strategy also meets accountability for the authorities who had direct supervision over the suspect and the units and personnel who conducted the military operation in Ngabo. Now, this includes the colonial La Republic du Cameroon commander of the 52 BIM, who acknowledged that he authorized a recognizance operation to Ngabo, and the colonial Ndu subdivisional officer. Now, the 17 vigilantes would have been operating under his supervision. According to family members, lawyers, the suspects all stated that the operation in Ngabo had been authorized by the Colonial La Republic du Cameroon commander of the 52 BIM and the Colonial La Republic du Cameroon Nduso prefect.
Well, lawyers for the victims also said that the judge in charge of the case also sits on the Court of Appeals, to which complaints about the trial and requests for review will be referred. If the parties are not satisfied with the judgment and the case is referred to the appeals court, the review will be carried out by the same judge, said Barrister Richard Tamful, one of the family members' lawyers. This is a blatant violation of the rights to appeal to an impartial tribunal, as set out in the principles and guidelines on the right to fair trial and legal assistance in Africa. Judicial impartiality is compromised if a judicial official sits as member of an appeal tribunal in a case which he or she decided or participated in a lower judicial body.
As the trial goes on, La Republic du Cameroon Colonial Security Forces continues to commit serious crimes in the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, underscoring a climate of impunity that has fueled the conflict in Ambaland for 7 years. Human Rights Watch observed that the lack of justice for the killings of civilians in Ngabo and the reoccurring military abuses are avoidable consequences of the failure to ensure effective investigations and prosecutions. Cameroonian authorities should rein in their security forces, ensure an end to abuses, and guarantee that those most responsible for the Ngabo killings, as well as those serious abuses, are held to account in fair and effective trials.
Well, eyewitness account Gladys Kuitere, a woman in her 50s, was the first victim. Emerging from her doorway, she was shot dead by attackers who entered her home and killed her daughter and 5 of her grandchildren, who were all under the ages of 18, and one of whom was just 5 months old. Kuitere's 2 other grandchildren, Jude and Mediane, fled the house into the thick bush surrounding the village, where they were also shot and killed. Both their bodies in the bush and the house were set ablaze.
7 people in a nearby house were also killed and set on fire, witnesses said, as attackers swept through the village, shooting indiscriminately at fleeing men, women, and children. Some victims were shot dead in the street and their corpses set on fire where they fell. Others were dragged back into their homes, which were then set ablaze. The attackers next moved to neighboring Ngabo, where they rounded up and beat dozens of men, stole cell phones, looted homes, and warned residents that they would return in 3 days and kill anyone who remained in the village. Any retaliation against Fulani in the area would also be met with death. The attackers told residents by midday, 21 civilians had been killed.
Well, the following day, survivors buried their dead in 4 mass graves, while 2 injured, including one woman who lost her baby due to her, remained at a local hospital receiving treatment. The violence displaced around 700 people at the time, according to the UN's emergency aid coordination body, OCHA, which traveled to the area to conduct a needs assessment.
In the week following the Ngabo attack, Fulani militia hired by the Colonial Republic to Cameroon barbaric government carried out subsequent attacks in the nearby villages of the Fondong and Mem in Boyo County, displacing about 2,000 more civilians, local aid organizations, and UN officials. Now, the Ambazonian liberation fighters, known locally as the Amber Boys, are estimated to control some 80% of the heavily forested northern zone of the southern Cameroons. The Amber Boys are increasingly better equipped and organized. They have recently been carrying out more sophisticated guerrilla-style ambushes and attacks.
Well, besides the Holocaust in Ngabo, peace-loving Ambazonians have suffered similar fates from brutal La Republic du Cameroon military killings, burnings, lootings, maiming, raping in several other localities like Mautau, Kwakwa, Muyuka, Moya, Boya, Ekona, Manfe, Ndop, Kumbo, Batibo, Nje, Pinyin, Santa, Bali, only for standing up for their fundamental rights, and over 40,000 people have been killed. Over 500 homes and villages razed, hundreds of thousands have fled their homes and living under deplorable conditions in the bushes or neighboring towns and villages. Many are on the run as refugees, while others in jail.
All right, let's go to the 6th report, the 6th sad massacre. Let's look at the Balikumbat massacre. Now, the commandant of Tuber, a French-speaking colonial officer from the French Cameroon, wiped out an entire family in Balikumbat. Women and children were not spared. Miraculously, a 4-month-old baby survived the massacre, lying on the dripping blood of her dead mother. The crime of the victim is that they are relatives of an Ambazonian freedom fighter.
Well, it's standard practice for French Cameroon to go, kill, and harass relatives of people they seek to kill or arrest. Strangely, no official news channel ever reported the Balikumbat massacre until the story picked up by our international news league correspondent in Bamenda. Well, let's see the video of that.
This is a nursing mother being shot. This is the baby. The nursing mother being shot today in Babanki by La Republique. Shot. The woman was being shot by the commandant of Tuba on her stomach. So this is the baby line. The baby line. 4 months old. Baby. Yes, now one woman this way the killer where the kid in fact one compound. Now one this. Then now 2 days. The way the killer one compound. Then 3. Now 3 this. Number 3 this. Where the killer today. Then number 4 this. Then number 4 and number 5 this. Number 5 this. For this compound, the key for this compound, the key, the key 4 women then with 1 boy. So now work that for a lot.
All right, very sad, very sad. If you go through all of this report, like I highlighted, these are just very few of the numerous massacres that has happened so far. But before we bring Dr. Mungwa, let's get the editorial, because in the home front, they believe that Ambazonia is worthy to merit a nation. So Star Smart will get that editorial for us right about now.
We the people, ABC Amba TV, Ambazonia Broadcasting Corporation. The voice of the voiceless, the voice of Ambazonia, connecting the world from Africa with untold stories, Africa's best.
In our editorial today, we'll take a look at a message that the Home Front writes in bold: the British Southern Cameroons, also known as Ambazonia, is worthy enough to merit the grace of a nation. We have vehemently banned all manipulative nicknames, colonial appellations, and abusive sobriquets which hide our true identity and undermine our integrity as a nation. This message from the Home Front says, from now henceforth, the Ambazonian think tank trust need to irrigate and sanitize with shampoo the warped philosophy of all those who wrongfully believe on the one hand that French La République du Cameroun deserves more, while on the other hand, Ambazonia deserves far less. They have taken to the rostrum, often addressing us as less than a nation, while at the same time allowing La République du Cameroun to reign supreme and treat us abusively as if we were her slaves. Our new dramatic revolutionary initiative now is at any public arena, be it an interview by any foreign journalist, conference, or international mediation process, we have to make sure that is set straight and we are properly addressed as the UN Trust Territory of British Southern Cameroon. Being a UN Trust Territory, the United Nations handed us over in trust to be admitted by the British. The intention was to make sure we were effectively decolonized thereafter. But if by dint or some mishaps the British wallowed themselves in a pigsty with the French and failed to do her job, it boils back to the fact that we remain in trust territory pending decolonization. The logic here is neither the British nor the French own us after the end of their trusteeship agreement with the United Nations. But for somebody like Dr. Simone Munzu to claim that our case has become statute barred at the UN due to the passage of time makes him look like a big joke. Why? Because to date, slavery, annexation, and colonialism are international crimes. He needs to be prosecuted for such manipulative and incendiary utterances. Those who continue to lump us into the same salad platter with La Republic by referring to us as Anglophones, Northwest and Southwest, separatists, les Biafrais, les jeunes Algouchés, and continue to use toxic expressions such as your leaders. Your elites, head of your government are hardened criminals who are bent on hiding our true identity as a nation. We shall stop them from abusing and disrespecting our nation, for we were never part of La République du Cameroun when they achieved their independence on January 1st, 1960, and we never signed and declared any union treaty in Fumban. Ambazonia deserves more. Now, this is courtesy Homefront Ambazonia Watchman, signed February 2023. With that, we've come to the end of today's article on the British Southern Cameroons, also known as Ambazonia, is worthy enough to merit the grace of a nation. And also the end of our editorial for today. If you want more of such enlightening messages, kindly visit our website at www.abcambatv.com for more. Subscribe, become a club member, and a part of this winning strategy. Final payment details on your screen. I am Star Smart reporting for Undaunted ABC Amber TV.
All right, thank you so much, Steph Smart, for that editorial. And to the climax of today, you know, of course, what time it is. It's time for us to Secretary for Communications and I, Dr. Martin Mungwa, F.ASCE, Fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers, and today is going to be giving an open letter to the diplomatic communities, analyzing the pattern and practice of La Republic du Cameroon massacres in Ambazonia. All right, and so Dr. Mungwa, we are ready for you.
From the savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, to educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society.
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic du Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you prepared? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, when you know better, then you do better. Ambazonians, watch Ethics for an Emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 4 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
Global greetings to all Ambazonians and welcome to today's presentation. The topic of our discussion today is an open letter to the diplomatic community, the continuing pattern of La République du Cameroon massacres in Ambazonia. Dear Ambazonians and the international community, we have once again witnessed another terrifying attempt by the armed forces of La République du Cameroon to abduct and massacre innocent Ambazonian citizens. Once again, we have witnessed a wild rush to judgment by detractors working against the Ambazonian struggle for independence. These detractors lay blame on our valiant Ambazonian restoration forces. Before getting into the details, as well as recalling the pattern of La République du Cameroon massacres in Amazonia, the interim government would like to extend its appreciation and gratitude to BBC Africa for airing clips of a long interview with President Samuel Ikomisako. Through the BBC, the world is now aware of who is in control of the home front vis-à-vis La République du Cameroon. The world is now aware that the propaganda machine of La République du Cameroon has always portrayed its contractors, Cho Ayaba of AGOVC and Akwanga of Sokadev, who the perpetrators of some of the most heinous acts of our own people are, as the defenders of Ambazonia. The interview also comes at a crucial time in this revolution when the future of Ambazonia is at stake and underscores the key role of Dr. Samuel Ikomisako as a principal in all negotiations for an independent and sovereign nation. Slowly but surely, the irrepressible voice and international personality of the indigenous peoples of Ambazonia has emerged on the international scene. We claim our position as the direct successor to the Honorable Augustine Ngomjua government in Boya following the bloody failure of a test federation with a lawless La République du Cameroon from 1961 to 1984. Dear ambassadors, the handling of recent fatal shooting of 5 civilians and wounding of over 40 by unidentified armed men in CDC Mundoni, in this case, points to the concerns that President Sako and the interim government had repeatedly raised regarding attempts by La République du Cameroon and its contractors to lay blame on separatist fighters. We know why they do so. This rush to judgment is a disingenuous attempt to tarnish the image and reputation of our soldiers, the ARFs, with such heinous crimes. Going back to the BBC interview, when asked about accusation that separatist fighters carried out the killing of 5 CDC workers, President Sako said the following, and I quote, "It has not been part of our practice to just go into any place, even if these people are deemed to act contrary to our orders, and just spray bullets like spraying mosquitoes. That has not been our modus operandi. There are 4 actors that are active in the war terrain of Ambazonia, and I should make this clear. 4 separate actors, criminal elements can come from both sides, and yes, they can come from our side, but that has never been our style. When people go against our laws, they have many times got arrested, have been taken into custody, and then released. Unfortunately, the clip of the BBC interview was truncated and left out President Sako's call for an international investigation into these crimes to ascertain who is to blame. For the past 6 years, many stakeholders have been sitting on fences at a distance and dictating who is responsible for the atrocities committed in our land, and relying on a lawless La République du Cameroon to speak the truth, which is demonstrably impossible. We believe that such lack of empathy among Ambazonians has emboldened La République du Cameroon to continue funding rival groups on the fifth column in Ambazonia, covertly to prosecute the war on Ambazonia in the most blistering fashion ever. It would seem that that the proof beyond reasonable doubt is impossible to the layman. Behold, there is indisputable forensic evidence in testimony from field actors, intercepted messages, satellite imagery, and other means linking Yaoundé directly to genocidal killings in Ambazonia. From the evidence of the past 6 years, the interim government believes that in the absence of facts proven beyond reasonable doubt, and given the absence yet of an international fact-finding mission, the only other logical approach would be to look at the past patterns and practices of La République du Cameroon. Analyzing La République du Cameroon practice of massacres in Ambazonia reveals the role of Cho Ayaba, or Egg of Sea, Akwanka, or Sokadev, and Atanganji as paid La République contractors trained and funded by La République du Cameroon to commit crimes that are then used as propaganda to tarnish the image of Ambazonian nationalist fighters. We have irrefutable facts. Here are some documented facts about the ARFs and their behavior regarding revenge against its people when one of theirs is killed. One of our generals was killed in Melende in Meme County, where the village rose up, betrayed, and killed him. The ARFs went back to the village to carry out corrective measures. They arrived armed with AK-47s and anger in their hearts, but not a single person was arrested, let alone spraying the population like mosquitoes. Now, in the case of alleged killing of CDC workers and wounding of 40 others, means the killers were shooting in all directions as people fled. This act can only be done by those on contract or that have no relationship with the people they are killing. Our fighters cannot go out and spray bullets without knowing who can be victimized. Furthermore, our fighters have relations in Del Monte, and in some cases, they know the workers there. Thus, such an action of random shooting does not make sense. Dear Ambazonians and the international community, this incident came as a retaliation by La République du Cameroon after the Ambazonian nationalist fighters eliminated about a dozen of La République du Cameroon thugs in Ambazonian highlands in Bui County. In the CDC killings in Fago County, as explained, La République du Cameroon contractors came camouflaged in masks and the rugged outfits of Ambazonian restoration forces. These La République du Cameroon gunmen sprayed bullets onto CDC workers like mosquitoes. Soon after, and without any investigations, its representative, Chris Ano, came on air to claim responsibility in the name of ARFs, but without any investigation in a similar fashion to La République Communication Minister of late. They speak propaganda that is free of facts. When did the investigations take place? And where is the evidence? Chris Anu has long aligned himself with La République du Cameroon. Eyewitness reports state that the killers spoke in French, like La République du Cameroon soldiers do. The only party that has no blood relations with the workers are La République du Cameroon soldiers, and therefore do not care whom they kill. The genocide committed by La République du Cameroon or its contractors has followed the same pattern. Indiscriminate killings of men, women, and children, followed by denials in Yaoundé. Here is a recollection. 1. Gabo massacre. In February 2020, La République du Cameroon soldiers attacked the village of Gabo, killing at least 21 civilians, including 13 children and a pregnant woman. 2. Kumba massacre. In October 2020, gunmen attacked the Mother Francisca International Bilingual Academy School in Kumba, in Meme County, killing 7 children and injuring 13 others. 3. Mautu Massacre. In January 2021, La République du Cameroon carried out a massacre in the village of Mautu in Fako County, killing at least 8 civilians, including women and children in Fako County. Pinyin Massacre. In December 2020, La République du Cameroon carried out a massacre in the village of Pinyin, killing at least 10 civilians in Mezan County. 5. Widekum Massacre. In June 2018, La République du Cameroon carried out a massacre in the village of Widekum, killing at least 4 civilians in Momo County. Cho Ayaba promised to cut the heads of chiefs and farms, and in a few days, a young man was beheaded in Bafut, Mezan County. Cho Ayaba signed an alliance with Namdi Kano, and a few days after, our refugees were being hunted since then. This was a planned act with La République du Cameroon to discredit the interim government and secure the allegiance of Nigerian President Buhari. Cho Ayaba massacred 11 fighters in Batubo in 2018, and when questioned, he said, "No one dares the ADF," and goes free. 9. Cho Ayaba invited fighters in Batubo in July 2022, naming it Operation Sunshine, which was rather an invitation for fighters to be liquidated. In the end, there wasn't any operation, but the killing of at least a dozen Ambazonian fighters, mostly from Bui County. And recently, the killing of the Fon of Esu, which received international media attention as La République stayed mute. 10. Cho Ayaba is notorious for kidnapping all through the duration of this struggle. That is why, since the auctioning of Ivomba to La République du Cameroon in 2018, the ADF has never fought any battles against La République du Cameroon. We would like to underscore the need for members of the international community to understand the distinction between the ARFs under the interim government and La République du Cameroon contractors like Cho Ayaba, who is parading as Ambazonian separatist fighter, whereas he is at the beck and call of La République du Cameroon and ready to cover up for her massacres in Amazonia. This distinction is extremely important, and this interim government will continue to remind members of the international community about the need to keep this distinction in mind. The interim government believes that only an international fact-finding mission to Amazonia will ascertain the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Dear Ambazonians, arming parallel groups in a revolution to commit criminal acts is not new. During the American War of Independence, the colonizer Britain armed enslaved blacks to fight on their side in exchange for freedom. After the war, they were resettled in Nova Scotia in Canada and Sierra Leone in West Africa. In apartheid South Africa, Chief Buthelezi was funded by the white regime to undermine Mandela's ANC. I do have news for those parallel groups working for La République du Cameroon against Ambazonia. La République du Cameroon will not be resettling you when the dust settles. They will simply eliminate you to hide their crimes, just as Khartoum did to their armed group in South Sudan and Jakarta to East Timor. Dear Ambazonians, that brings us to a point which this interim government would like to make. We are more than 8 million Ambazonians, and it matters. It matters a great deal. The March of Icona Mothers sounded this message in a clear and powerful way. The action of our brave mothers resounded the clarion calls for Ambazonians that citizen action matters a great deal. As they say, the worst can only happen if those who can do good stand by and do nothing while evil strikes. Our mothers demonstrated that they are good people and do not intend to stand by when the colonial army of La République du Cameroon descends upon them. This same way they have done over and over again. Dear Ambazonians, various members of this interim government and activists have paid homage today to the heroic action of our mothers of Icona. We cannot commend them enough. Their action has sent a very clear message to the colonial regime. Enough is enough. We will no longer stand by while you round up innocent children and disappear them. We will no longer stand by. More importantly, the action of our mothers is a timely reminder to us all Ambazonians of the central responsibility which we all carry for the liberation of the homeland. I would like to highlight some key points. First, the action of our mothers showed that the Ambazonian people understand when the president says that he does not need to ask people to take action against the colonial regime when they think they must and are able to do so safely. This is the spirit which will take us to Boya. While our restoration forces take on the colonial army of La République du Cameroon, we, the citizens, must remain vigilant and take action together, standing as one community and one people. And here, I would like to stress the powers of numbers. The interim government seizes this opportunity to stress and insist that any of our children still held be released immediately and unconditionally. Second, our mothers came out in their numbers as one community, as one people. Yes, numbers can be very important in peaceful protests as they can demonstrate the level of support for a particular cause or movement and can help to amplify the message. Large numbers of protesters can create a powerful visual and emotional impact, attracting media attention and drawing attention to our cause. The presence of large crowds can also convey the sense of unity and solidarity, making it more difficult for the colonial regime to ignore our demands. In addition, a large crowd can help to deter violence or intimidation by the colonial regime. As such, while we do not encourage any actions that could endanger the lives of our people, we would like to stress the importance of collective action in numbers that will prevent the enemy from intimidation and inflicting the kind of havoc they have tended to wreak on our people. Having said that, the illegal acts of the colonial regime in Yaoundé coming out to deliver collective punishment without any investigation to determine what happened, who the suspect was, is a classic example of the pattern of lawlessness and quite shocking barbaric of La République I talked about earlier. As I have said in previous presentations, the actions of the colonial regime of La République du Cameroon clearly shows that they continue to apply their illegality to our people and treat us quite differently from how they treat their citizens. The incident in point is a clear example. The interim government would like to take this opportunity to categorically reject a statement made by Mr. Chris Anu claiming that our struggle is a desperate one, which is taking desperate action. The world knows that the colonial army of La République du Cameroon has been completely defeated by our restoration forces and has resorted to committing desperate acts in retreat. I repeat, desperate acts, such as descending onto a local community and just rounding up any moving object they could find. That is a definition of desperation. Instead of retreating to their country, the defeated colonial army of La République du Cameroon continues to make incursions on our territory and commit desperate acts like rounding up a group of boys playing football, a beloved game. Ironically, we have seen Ambazonian football stars and geniuses whom La République du Cameroon claim to be their citizens and who have handed them victory in major football tournaments around the world. Yet the colonial army shamelessly came and rounding up young innocent boys who would be football stars of tomorrow. Of course, this is part of their strategy to completely destroy Ambazonians and prevent our people from achieving their highest aspirations. In its desperation, the colonial army of La République du Cameroon forgets that it will need the same boys whom they will claim to be their citizens tomorrow to save their country. So let me be clear. The Ambazonian struggle for recognition of our independence is determined, focused, and resolute, not desperate. We have a clear sense of the challenges we face, and despite our people being killed, we are determined and have a vision to get to Boya and out of a failed federation with French proxy La République du Cameroon. We are determined, and Ambazonia must be free. Short live the revolution, long live the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Thank you, and over to you.
We had an investigative team, and they were women. There were 2 women and 1 man who were involved in the investigative team, and there had been a kidnapping attempt against them, which raised a red flag for me because there was only one person who knew where they were, and that was Ellie Smith. She thought that she could trust him. She let him know what she was doing. There was a kidnapping attempt, and so I wanted them to be safely back from the field before I had any further communication with Ellie Smith. Again, I reached out to Ayaba Cho because I hadn't realized at the time that there was that connection. I'm sorry, am I confusing you? Believe me, this was a very complex matter. Going into the field and researching all of this was very complex. But I was
It's not confusing at all. I'm interested to know, when you reach out to Ayaba Cho, you had not really known much about him. What did you get? What did you want to get from him at that time?
Well, I had communicated with him a few times previously. I wanted to learn more about the Ambazonian struggle. I wanted to know what was going on there. I was able to connect with him, and that was why I reached out to him, because I knew that Ellie Smith had a connection with ADF and with AGOV-C, but I had not yet put together that AGOV-C and ADF were most likely involved in the same activities that Ellie was involved in. I had not taken that next step yet when I informed him about what we had learned about Ellie Smith.
So, again...
And then as soon as Ellie Smith got back to me, I realized that it must have been Ayaba Cho who reached out to him. And then that was the point at which I told my people in the field that they needed to get back immediately.
What did Ellie Smith want to get from you when he reached you, when he contacted you instead of Ayaba?
I don't know, because if I open the message, he gets a notification that I received the message, and I wanted to make sure my people got back in the field quickly before we had any sort of confrontation.
So, Mika told you that some of the arms leaving Yaoundé were going to leaders of the separatist movement.
Yes, apparently the arms were going in both directions. There were arms that were from the BIR that were going to the separatist movement, and then there were the arms that were being purchased from those who agreed to drop their weapons and go to the DDR systems, who were then going to the BIR. So it was actually going in both directions.
Now,
you have a very complex situation over there.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to untangle it to get a clear picture of what was going on there. What we've been able to establish is that Eli Smith was an agent who was going in between Mika. Mika was his agent, I guess, who was then talking to the fighters. Am I correct? Amazonian fighters.
Yes, you're correct. And Micah apparently is one of several agents whose role is to lure fighters from the bushes and into the DDR centers. And as you know, there are more and more NGOs popping up whose mandate is to do that as well.
Right. Now, tell us about your discovery. This is very important, and let me get to what you write about it, talking about the mass grave that apparently was uncovered in Tole. You write, finally we revealed our discovery of a secret BIRO interrogation center at the Ndawara tea plantation in Tole. Of the many horror stories our investigators heard regarding deplorable conditions inside disarmament, demobilization and reintegration centers, the most troubling account came from outside the centers, based on reports of the stench of rotting corpses from our informants in Boya. We traveled to the tiny village of Tole. Crouched in the back of a transport vehicle, our team went undetected as they passed through each military checkpoint en route to the Ndawara tea plantation. As they get to the plantation were heavily guarded by BIR soldiers brandishing their weapons, your team ventured deeper into the village to explore the source of the rancid odor, the grisly side where BIR soldiers regularly dump mutilated bodies. Please tell us about this story.
This was just beyond imagination, and they're not actually mass graves because they don't bury them. They are piles of mutilated bodies that show up on the fringes of Tole. At least a couple times a week. We were told by those who are familiar with the situation that truckloads of fighters are brought to the tea plantation, not to the DDR system, to the tea plantation to be detoxed in case they're on drugs or alcohol, to be detoxed and to be interrogated. Many do not make it past that point. Their bodies are mutilated and they are dumped on the fringes of Tole.
So tell us how you got to the scene.
Well, I can't give specifics because I don't want to risk the safety of certain individuals.
No, you don't need to mention them. Just tell us how you talked about getting into a truck and getting into escaping, avoiding the BIR to get to the scene. Paint that little scenario for us, please.
I really can't go into too much detail about that because the tactics that this individual, that the driver used for us, would help to identify.
Yeah, Dr. Mungwa, I know that you follow through that particular video, and you made mention of Choayaba in so many cases in your delivery this night. Please, is this video that we just watched, is it in line with some of the things that you talked about this evening?
Thank you. Good evening, ladies. Absolutely. If you've been as anchor ladies, I'm sure you've actually seen a lot of the facts that we presented today to the the international community as well as Ambazonians. You can hear, in that, you can see in that video what this investigative journalist, stated as far as Cho Ayaba is concerned. We can demonstrate that there is a direct linkage between Cho Ayaba and La République du Cameroon as one of its very, very important contractors. And from the other pieces of evidence that we've shown, Cho Ayaba has been working for La République du Cameroon and is still doing so now. So when you hear Cho Ayaba make such declarations maybe on social media, for example, in the case of the Canada talks, we are going to withdraw from the Canada talks, or we don't like what La République is doing. Look, it is just whitewash. He is trying to present to the international community that he is part of the solution in Ambazonia. He is not. He's actually part of the problem. And I hope with these pieces of evidence that we've shown today, the international community, and especially the ambassadors, will look closely as to the solution that the world is trying to put in front of us. Because as far as this revolution is concerned, the only principle that can represent the aspirations of the Ambazonian people is President Samuel Ikomisako, because he has demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that he defends the sovereignty of our country, he defends the people of Ambazonia, and he stands to make sure that we do not have another fake independence as we had in the 60s. So it is very clear. And Cho Ayaba should be taken out of that equation. He is not part of us. He is a contractor. And you can see that these same people with Ellie Smith, these were the people running the show in Canada. Ellie Smith was head of the La République convoy, if I may call it that way, the delegation. So you can see that behind the scene, they have been working together. Let Ambazonians open their eyes and see the facts for themselves. And I think this video states volumes about what Cho Ayaba has been doing behind the scene. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Mungwa. Now, in your delivery this night and your speech this night, you took us back to the story of the Ekula women who marched in their numbers to ensure that the youths were released. Huge success. But then you related it to numbers being very important and in peaceful protest. Now, should I take that line or that phrase to probably be that the interim government is thinking of peaceful protest as a way to pass the message of freedom to La République du Cameroon?
All right. Thank you again. That's very important. I mean, if you listen very carefully, the president said they shouldn't be listening to him to give orders to the people. When they evaluate and find it fit for them to take such actions, they should go ahead. I think that's the message I have for Ambazonians here. When those brave women in the corner were on the street, it wasn't the interim government that told them to do so. They were able to assess the situation, they were able to determine the risks, and they felt that it was okay for them to do so. And I think that's the message that we want to tell or inform Ambazonians. We live in communities. When certain things happen to us, we have to think about it, we have to assess it, and we have to take the right move. Let's go back into the 1990s. What saved Frundi from being arrested and possibly killed by La République du Cameroon was the action of the Takumbek, was the action of the Bamenda population. They came out in their numbers, and today Frundi is free, despite the fact that he has sold the same people who stood to save his life. And this is it's very important. How powerful the people can be in the face of a government like La République du Cameroon. Over to you.
Yes. And in talking about how powerful the people can be, you also did mention of those who are in parallel groups working for La République du Cameroun against Ambazonia. Now, now that is certain and it's very obvious that those people are working for La République du Cameroun. What, when I ask what the interim government can always do differently, I always believe that the interim government has seen the light, and as those that have seen the light, there is how the light can call forth darkness, and darkness will definitely listen. And so you did mention that here again, that those who are working in parallel groups and working against Ambazonia should take note of so many other things. I'm asking here, Dr. Mungwa, do you think that there is so much more, or there is nothing the interim government can do to ensure that people do not work against the success of the interim government led by Dr. Samuel Ikometsako? Because at the end of the day, they are still Ambazonians.
Yeah, of course. Remember that information is the first teacher. We have to inform them in case some are doing it without knowing the consequences. I did mention 4 cases, historical fact that happened. During the American War of Independence, Britain decided to arm the slaves, the black slaves, and promise them that they will be free. And these slaves actually fought against the Americans. Of course, not all the slaves fought for the British. Some decided to fight for their country. But those who fought for for Britain, they found themselves on the wrong side of events after the revolution. And Britain was obliged to move them out of America. And they were sent to Nova Scotia in Canada and Sierra Leone in West Africa. We all know that Sierra Leone is most of it is actually habited by former slaves from the United States. So that's the story. And you take the case of South Sudan. In fact, Bashir of Sudan, or North Sudan, used to create a lot of SPLNA, the South Sudan Liberation Front, Liberation Army. They had several of them, all funded by Khartoum. But what happened? Eventually they lost. And I don't want to tell you what their fate is. They were all killed. And the same goes to East Timor, from Jakarta, funded by the Indonesian government. And when the Timorese had their independence, what happened? All these people disappeared. Of course, they were never accepted in East Timor, and neither the Jakarta was ready to keep them. So that story is not going to be any different in Amazonia. And for those who have ears to listen, they will be surprised. When this war is over, La République itself will gun them down. They will kill them any way possible, poison them, because they are going to be a liability to La République du Cameroun, where in the International Court of Justice shows up. Because these people will be very ready to go and testify against La République du Cameroun. So what is the cheapest way out? They will kill you. Example, what happened to Zogo Martinez in Zogo? He was killed too. Is it not for the same reason? He became a liability to some people in government. That's the same thing that will happen to those Ambazonians who are now forming what they call the 5th column, working against their own people. And they know themselves. At the head of it is Choayaba and all his soldiers, or so-called contractors on the ground. They are doing things that they will be surprised what will happen to them when this war is over. And so this, first of all, as I said, is people have to be educated that this is no joking matter. You are not just going to show up one day and say, oh, I'm sorry, I did not know what I was doing, or I was deceived. Let it be known that you will be short-lived as far as this revolution is concerned. And you may not even be killed by Ambazonians, by the person who hired you. La République du Cameroon, because they have shown how vicious they can be. These people are heartless. These people are savages. Over to you.
Yes, Dr. Mungwa, let me take you back a bit. Last week, we were looking at the story of CDC workers, CDC Mondani workers that were killed. And great thing, you also reported that today in your speech. Now, it's good that the interim government has been refused. President Sako even gave a speech concerning this, which we also brought here on ABC Amber TV. And you are here again with that statement. At the last part of that statement, you said, let me read some part of it just to remind of our listeners and our viewers here this evening. You said, "Dear Ambazonians, the handling of recent fatal shooting of 5 civilians and wounding of over 40 by unidentified armed men in CDC Mondeni in this case points to the concerns that President Sako and the interim government had raised attempts by La Republic to Cameroon and its contractors to lay blame on separatist fighters. We know why they do so. We know why they do so." Now, there were several videos, even one by Capo Daniels, also stated that it wasn't the interim government or the Amber fighters that actually carried out that murder or that shooting. Now, why do you think they are doing so? Because, I mean, you just left it there that we know why they are doing so. And initially, they blamed the Ambazonian Restoration Forces for carrying out that murder. We had to go a long way to prove that it wasn't Ambazonian fighters. But you're here saying we know why they do so. In your words, Dr. Mungwa, why? Why are they doing so?
Well, first, you have to understand, if you look at the pattern, how crimes are being either associated with Ambazonia. There's been this pattern where we call it the lazy man's approach to solving problems. Instead of conducting an investigation and bringing irrefutable facts to the table, somebody just sits down and declares that this is what is happening, because they know that if the investigations are carried out, it will be demonstrated that the people they are claiming to have committed that crime it's not accurate. And therefore, you see that it is an easy way out. It is an easy way out to suddenly say that these are the people who did it and assume that that is fact. It is not fact. And that's why we say we know why they do so, because they want to escape the obvious. If we have irrefutable evidence that somebody committed a crime, where you put all the facts on the table, then the people who always make claim to knowing the facts, you realize that their facts are not really facts. Okay? So can you imagine, even in the United States, where you have policemen who go out with cameras, even when there's a shooting, they don't just go and declare that this person shot this person and that's it. They have to conduct thorough examination, investigations. They have to have eyewitnesses if possible. They document everything such that at the end of the day, the facts are irrefutable. Have you ever seen that in La République du Cameroon? Just recently, when the case of Balikumbat, where somebody went and killed children, the minister or whoever stood up and said, "Oh, we know these are separatist fighters who are revenging," or something. I mean, it is, how did they come about that conclusion? When Chris Ano went on air last week or so and said that and declared that there were Ambazonian fighters who killed the 5 CDC workers, where did he get the evidence? Unless these so-called Ambazonian soldiers report to him. And that's where the parallel groups come in. Chris Ano, Cho Ayaba, They are contractors of La République government. So whenever they want to carry any dirty crime, they will send La République soldiers dressed as Ambazonians to commit these crimes. And that's why they always come out and say, we carry out the crime. Whether it is Chris Anu or Cho Ayaba, we have documents of all these declarations. So we know why they do all that. We understand, because they want to escape the factual, the evidence that will point to somebody else, of course, point to themselves. So they rather claim that somebody else did it, or claim that these are people who are not associated with those who have contracted them to commit the crime. So they pull away the blame from La République du Cameroon and claim that it is the ARFs without any evidence whatsoever. This has been the modus operandi of La République du Cameroon since the beginning of this war. And it should be known. And that's why President Sako said there are 4 actors in the war terrain in Ambazonia. And it's important that for us to know the truth, we need an international fact-finding mission to Ambazonia so we can ascertain what is actually happening and who is responsible for these mass killings. We don't believe that that Ambazonians will go into the CDC and shoot at random. It's impossible. Only people who don't have relations with Ambazonians will do so. Our people don't do such heinous crimes. So that is very clear. Over to you.
Clear indeed. Absolutely clear and very logical. Where on that regard, we've been talking about this kind of incident and basically the genocide carried out by La République du Cameroon in Ambazonia, and ask what can be done on the effect of Ambazonian citizens to avoid such happening in the future. And can you let us in on the plans for the Ambazonian Restoration Forces, if that's not too much information, because they are the backbone of self-defense protection in the British Southern Cameroons?
Yes, I mean, I will probably go back to what I said last week. Look, the approach that the interim government is taking is on multiple fronts. So it's not just working with the Ambazonian restoration forces, but also with the international community. And you have seen what happened recently. We had a major interview with BBC Africa, something that has not happened in a very, very long time. So this is one of the efforts that we've made to demonstrate to Ambazonians that we are very serious about what we're doing. And you can see the international community is now looking at President Sako for what he has done in the past couple of years, the way he has led this struggle or this revolution, the fact that he's been able to demonstrate beyond reasonable doubt that he is the principal. We talked about the Swiss-led process. He talked about the Canada monologue, and now he has been vindicated, which shows that he knows exactly what La République is out to do. We have now caught La République with pants down, and I don't know what else they have, under their sleeves to bring to the world. It's very clear. It's absolutely clear that La République du Cameroun has no intentions to go to any negotiation, but the international community will have to do something, and I think they've already started looking into other options. And one of the options is the fact that Dr. Sako was given this interview so that they can get his opinion and let the international community understand his position. And he clarified the international community on what has been happening since the past 3 or 4 years as far as these negotiations are concerned. And I can assure you that more interviews are in the pipeline, and he'll be giving more and more interviews. You will know about them when they take place. I can assure you that there's quite a bunch of them, and that is a very powerful approach. That is opening windows to the world on the diplomatic front, And again, as far as the ARFs are concerned, you've seen a lot of action all over Ambazonia. So I need not go into the details. Again, I don't think it's my role to give any specific military strategy. But we are working on these two fronts, and I can assure you that it will multiply in the months to come. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin Mungwa. You mentioned Chris and Cho Ayaba being proxies of La République du Cameroon. Well, now that Capo Daniel, spokesperson for the AGOVC and ADF, takes responsibility, and on the other hand, Chris Anu accuses the Ambazonian forces, don't you think with these huge voices purporting themselves as leaders is putting Ambazonia in limbo?
Well, again, it's all about education, and when we present the facts on the ground, I can tell you that the facts about Capo Daniel and AGOVC is now reaching corners that they never believed will ever get there. So we are working again on the diplomatic front. I think some people are beginning to understand our position, and I need not give details as to some of the major gains that we've been able to establish in the past week or so. So we are working very hard on the international front, and I think we're making headways. And a lot of people now are beginning to listen to us. That I can assure you. Cho Ayaba of AGOVC and the Capo Daniel, they'll soon be short-lived. I can assure you that, because the facts are beginning to gain ground. And we will continue to enlighten the world, and especially after the failure of the Canada monologue, I think it's a great opportunity that we can't miss to make sure that we extend the information and facts to all our stakeholders, so that something really important is put into place as far as our sovereignty is concerned. Over to you.
Thank you so much. The good thing is that the facts are beginning ground. That's a very positive note. On you want to Ambazonians, your last words for tonight? Anything you want to tell Ambazonians listening?
Fellow Ambazonians in the international community, I think last week when President Sako gave an interview to the BBC, I think many people were surprised. How come that it's coming at this time? But I think we can tell you that we are very grateful. We're very grateful to the BBC. They requested that interview, and they came and they wanted to talk to Dr. Sako, and he willingly accepted. That is a positive sign, because normally what happens is that we call, a major radio station or communications department for us to talk to them. In this case, they're the ones coming to talk to us. So that's an indication that they have seen what is happening, and the facts are very clear. They have the empirical data to demonstrate that Dr. Sako is a force to reckon with. And I can assure you that that's not the only major news house that is willing to talk to Dr. Sako. There are others already lining up to do the same. So this is really great news, and I want to again inform Ambazonians that we are not leaving any stone unturned. We are working very hard. Some of the engagements that we have, I cannot talk about them, obviously, until the appropriate moment, but we are working extremely hard to make sure that our message goes to the furthest part of the world as far as our sovereignty is concerned. And I just want to thank the ARFs for the remarkable job they've been doing, despite the limited resources. But I know that we've started the drafts again, and I believe that with such success story, many more Ambazonians will dip their hands in their pockets to fund our self-defense team or self-defense group, so that we can prepare ourselves for the months ahead. I also want to thank Ambazonians as well as the great ladies or women of Icona for rising up against this tyrant or this savage colonial governor or colonial administrator in Ambazonia. And that is very, very important. And I hope that other communities will seek opportunities or will take advantage of this and to determine when they can all rise up as one person to fight the evil regime. So I can tell you that today is a great day for me. When I look back at what has happened in the past 2 weeks, I believe that we've opened a new chapter in our march to sovereignty. Thank you, and over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, F.ASCE. Thank you so much. And your topic this evening, an open letter to the diplomatic community, continuing part of the Cameroon massacres in Ambazonia. It was an emotional piece for us here, but I'm sure that it will definitely get better with time. We'll definitely win this fight. On behalf of Steph Smart here and the entire Undotted crew, we say thank you for tuning in.
We'll leave you with ABC Amber TV Images. Good night and God bless you.